All right. So, before I introduce our speaker, I want to acknowledge the Office of Alumni Engagement's community values statement. Our mission invokes an environment of mutual respect, free expression, and inquiry. Program participants accept these principles when they join this community and this webinar, and you agree to follow the following community values. One is respect for the rights, differences, experiences, and dignity of others. Number two is express our viewpoints in a thoughtful and respectful manner. Number three is have honesty and integrity in working with all members of the community. And the fourth is accountability for personal behavior. So let me introduce Michael. Michael Bolognino is a human coach who helps people get unstuck, get clear, and take action towards making their ideal lives, careers, and relationships real. After more than 20 years in tech marketing, Michael finally melted down the golden handcuffs and resigned from Google to explore what was possible when he applied his full attention and energy to helping people live and work more authentically. Since then, he has supported the transformation of scores of clients across industries and age groups, from folks in tech to an opera director, a veterinarian, an Olympic skateboarder, and many others. He lives in the Berkshires at the Philomena, a 19th century rectory that he and his husband Nick renovated and now run as an occasional Airbnb. In his free time, he's an active member of the Pacemakers Masters swim team. He's going to be swimming coming up soon at Harvard, he just told me, and serves as chair of the West Stockbridge Dog Park Committee. Now I will hand the presentation over to Michael.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, as always, for inviting me to speak with my fellow alumni. And to all of you, thank you for coming. Just from the chat, I can see people are showing up in a lot of different ways: frustrated, hopeful, overwhelmed, tired. You're in the right place. The biggest gift I think that we can share today is an opportunity to slow down. I don't know how much in your life you consciously slow down, hopefully sometimes, but consider this hour a chance to do just that. So, as Nicole said, I'm Michael. People call me MB. You can call me whatever you'd like, but this is me. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of background about my connection to Tufts and then also myself and what I do because it relates to what we're going to work on today. So, first, I don't know which year you all graduated from Tufts, but when I did, or when I enrolled, actually, it was 1997, and I didn't have an email account. There was no such thing as Facebook, and we all got this paper book. I can't see your hands right now, but raise your hand if you got a paper book. This was the best day for me before I went to Tufts because I got to flip through and check out everybody and try to see who I might be friends with, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's me in the heart. And there's one other thing I want to point out on this page that might be hard for you to read. But basically, they asked each of us, well, they had us put our major. And I put my major in as pre-med. And the reason that that is important on this call in this context is because I just want to point out that throughout our life, what's important to us and what success looks like changes. And before I went to Tufts, I went there as a first generation college student. I'm a child of Italian immigrants. And to me, being a doctor was like the best, most successful thing I could think of. And so I went into Tufts with that in mind. Well, the joke was on my family because I ended up majoring in creative writing, poetry, and working in marketing. But again, my point is that it's interesting for us to reflect on how our values and our dreams kind of evolve over time. Okay. Now, at Tufts, there were a lot of things I loved, but there were two things I loved so much. One was the swim team. As Nicole said, 28 years later, I'm still swimming. This picture on the left, that's me with a shaved head in the top and the coach and my team. I went to Tufts because of the swim team. It changed my life. And so swimming is the reason that I went to Tufts, to be totally honest. The other thing, it's hard to tell from this picture, but the other thing I loved about Tufts was concert board. Nicole, is that still there? Do you know?
Oh, absolutely. Concert board,
Okay.
yes.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it was the coolest thing ever. I'm a music fan. So we got to pick who would come and play the show at Spring Fling. And we had guests like Ben Folds 5 and Guster, of course, and LL Cool J and Outkast. And the funniest story is that me, as a sophomore, I think, I had to drive to Logan Airport and pick up the Sugar Hill Gang, like the original rappers. So that was a crazy Tufts experience. But all that to say, these were two things I loved about Tufts. And there's a last thing about Tufts that I want to say that is super important to me because Tufts changed my life. Not only the education that I got, but after I graduated, I could not find a job. It was 2001. I got a job at Diesel in Cambridge, actually folding jeans as I looked for a different job. I moved to Seattle for love. And when I was there, just before my job at Starbucks, I dialed in and I checked the Tufts alumni website. We had this little tiny message board. And on that message board, there was a job posting for a marketing assistant at a company called Cranium. And I didn't know anything about Cranium at the time, but Cranium made games and books and toys. And I thought, well, this is looks really interesting. And I don't know much about marketing, but I'm going to go for it. So I contacted Adam Tratt, the Tufts alum that was on the message board. And basically, he wrote me back immediately and said, drop everything, write a cover letter, send me your resume. I did that. I was late for work. And then that's the rest of the story's history. It was my first real job, and it's how I landed in marketing. Okay, so a little bit more about myself. My first job ever was at my parents' deli. Like I said, we were Italian immigrants. It was called Roma's. I was organizing bread, and I eventually ran the register, et cetera. But I bring that up because it trained me in customer service. It trained me in interaction with people, and it was a formative way to grow up. After Cranium, I worked at a bunch of startups, and then I got the chance to interview at Google. I took that chance. I went straight for it. I treated it like my swim meets. I used to put my swimming times up on my all over my house. I did that with this interview at Google. I was like, I wrote on the wall like, "You're going to get this job. You will be the marketing coordinator or whatever." And I got the job, and then I spent 13 years there. And we'll get into that because resilience played a big role, not only in me getting there, but also a lack of resilience played a role in how I got out. Nicole mentioned that my husband and I renovated our house. This is on here too because this also relates to my story and what we'll do today, which is that one of my goals leaving Google was I wanted different ways to make money. So my house is also a part of a business that my husband and I run. And then this last picture is from my website. That's me as a coach, and we will talk about what that means briefly now. And again, it relates to what we're doing today. Okay. So Nicole kind of gave a hint about this, but I usually set this up as a joke. An opera director, veterinarian, marketing manager, professional skateboarder, lawyer, and wedding photographer walk into a bar. Now, it's not a joke. The thing about these people is that they all share one truth, and that is that they were all my clients. And I guess there's a second truth. And the thing that unites them all is that somewhere along their path, they were stuck, they were unclear, or they wanted more of something. They had whiffs of what it was that they wanted, but they didn't totally know. And that's why they came and did the work with me as a coach. And we set out to figure that out together. So people ask me all the time, what kind of coach are you? Are you a life coach, an executive coach, a leadership coach? There are so many flavors of coach. But what I can tell you is that after 5 years of being in this business, 5 years in my practice, it's clear to me that I'm a human coach. And Nicole referred to me this way. And I say that deliberately, not as a cop out, but I'm a human coach because, like I said, there's a single kind of concept that unifies everybody that I see. It doesn't have to do with whether they're a VP. It doesn't have to do with whether they're just starting out in their career or they're looking for a job. They all know they want something more and something different. And that's what unites them. Okay. So coaching in a really oversimplified description is answering a bunch of questions. Where am I now? Where do I think I want to go? Where do I actually want to go? And I put emphasis on actually because there's a distinction there. The client comes and they think they know what they want. They have a good sense. My job, if I'm doing it right, is to help them find something even better and even different than what they thought. So where do I actually want to go? And then, of course, how do I make it real? This is the most key element of coaching. Action is involved. Action is critical. You can do a lot of thinking and like in therapy, a lot of understanding how you are and how you want to be. But without action, it's impossible to make change, or it's harder, I should say. And again, I say that because it relates to what we're going to talk about today on resilience. So our goal today is that you will leave with a rekindled sense of resilience and a first real step or an action, like I just said, toward a shift that you want to make in your own life. And so I specifically say here rekindled resilience because my belief is that we all have resilience. The idea here is that sometimes that resilience gets knocked down, sometimes we can't access it. So we are going to look at ways that we can remind ourselves of it and access it. And then we're going to actually do an exercise that will help you figure out how to map your shift and along the way, pull in, pull back your resilience. So, an important part of today that I want to co-design with you is that first I want you to know it's a safe space. Like we don't all know each other, but it is a place that I'm committed to keeping safe. That means that we can be as open as we're comfortable with, and I want people to speak up. This is a discussion. It will only work if other people talk besides me. Um, I want, again, it has to do with what you're comfortable with, but just know that I'm going to be asking questions because I want us to co-create this together. I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas. You all have the answers, which is a lot like a coaching relationship too. My belief is that the knowledge is in you. My job is to help get it out. So keep that in mind. I encourage you to reflect, to write. There's going to be a couple points towards the end where I'm going to ask you to spend a couple minutes thinking about something. Please do that. You can do it on your own, but just grab something to write with, and you'll be set. And then just know there's no right or wrong answers, only honest ones. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So you may be thinking resilience now when AI is everywhere and up and down and all everyone's talking about, or inflation's happening, or layoffs are happening, or there's tariffs and what's happening with that, and the climate change is happening, and people are being disappeared, and there's political instability, and social media is in our faces, and we have to care for our families, and now we have a war that's going on. There's a lot of things right now that are trying to get their way into us to chip away at our resilience. Okay. So, with all of that in mind, why is now the time to call on resilience? It's because, like we just said, things are complicated. The news and the state of the world has been relentless. Many of us are navigating uncertainty in our work, in our lives. And we have big, important lives that require our full energy. And if our resilience is down, it's difficult to actually live and express the lives that we want to have. Okay, so this is my first question. Before we look at the actual definition, can I get a volunteer to either come off mute or put in the chat? What do you think? How would you define resilience? What does it mean?
I don't see anyone yet.
Okay, we got to warm up. It's the first question. I'll give it another 15 seconds, but anyone willing to tell me what they think resilience is?
The ability to
Ah,
adapt. Sorry.
excellent. Thank you. The
Oh,
ability to adapt. Go ahead.
David has his hand raised.
I understand it's a concept that arises from engineering in terms of the ability of metals to sustain and to return to their original position upon an impact. But it's applied to communities and individuals as well. And
Yes.
as was well said, ability to adapt, and sometimes it's viewed more as ability to either return to the original state or to rebuild better than before.
Okay. That was extremely well put, David. Thank you.
We have a we
In
have a
fact,
lot in the chat. We have a lot in the chat. You want
yeah, all
them?
right. Yeah, go ahead. Will you read them out?
Okay,
Will you read them
so
out?
we have rolling with the punches,
Yes.
the ability to weather the storm, ability to
Hmm.
keep trying, ability to
Yep.
bounce back from difficult situations, pushing
Yep.
through adversity.
Yes.
I think that's
All
what
of
we have.
those
Oh, and
beautifully
peaks and
done. Oh,
valleys. Peaks and valleys too.
absolutely. Absolutely. And what's so interesting is the official definitions from Oxford match what you all are saying. So, first, the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. So, recovery is in there. And then, David, to your point, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. I included this one because, yes, it's about a metal, but it's about elasticity. And it reinforces this concept that we're going to talk about, which is that we all already have resilience. So, I want you to take that word elasticity with you as a kind of boil down metaphor for what we mean by resilience. All right. By the way, everyone did a great job of interacting there. Good work. Keep it up. Okay, we're going to do it again. So, what happens in the absence of resilience? Can I get people to do it in the chat or come off mute? What are some ideas? What gets harder? What gets more complicated? How do we react? Sleep is hard. Yes, I see that in the chat. A feeling of defeat. Absolutely. A paralysis, hard to know what to do, hard to move. Good. Burnt out, nihilism. Yes, exactly. Hopelessness. Mhm. Good. And you can keep putting them in, but I'm going to tell you the ones that I've come up with that relate. So burnout. I mean, this came up in the chat. We're way more likely to burn out or suffer from stress. Self-doubt. I think this ties into paralysis. So narratives that we already may have around not doing enough can drive up that negative voice and cause us to doubt our capabilities. If we're not resilient, it's easy to be distracted. Intense pressure can distract us from maintaining balance, and it damages our ability to stay clear and to manage the environment we exist in. And when we're not feeling our full resilience, we can spiral, we can swirl, we have mental and physical anguish. We may or may not even be aware of it. And it can set us into like a spiral, a literal spiral, a state of worry. So resilience is so important. And there are real effects when you are not channeling your resilience. Okay. So before we do the exercise, I want to offer up 7 different perspectives on resilience that I have found in my practice helps people reconnect with their own resilience. These aren't new ideas. They're not earth-shattering. You'll probably be familiar with them, but I wanted to give you something that I could hold up and offer you as a fresh reminder of how to call resilience back to yourself when you feel that you need a bit of a boost. And again, through this process of these perspectives, I'm going to have some questions. It's going to be helpful if you all can play along. Okay, so the first one, we talked about this. The first perspective, you're already resilient. You would not be here if you were not tough and if you're not tenacious and elastic. I wrote the proof is in the Carmichael pudding, like a bad pun. But my point is that you went to Tufts. So there was some element of resilience that was required for you to enroll. So let me ask you, in what ways are you already resilient? Take your time with this one, but I'm curious, what evidence is there of your resilience if you're comfortable to share? I'll start with me. Like one evidence of my resilience was that, even though at Google I was flying high, I had really bad health and eating, but I kept up with some working out and I was able to take care of my body. I was in therapy. That helped me reclaim my resilience. Setting daily objectives, Kenneth says, that's a great idea of resilience. Knowing when to rest and recover. So awareness of what you actually need. Excellent. Excellent. Both of these are in your control. Next question, a little bit more specific. How did your resilience lead you to Tufts? I'd say, again, for me, swimming was resilient for me, not because it was physically hard, but this is for another workshop, but I was a gay kid that was in a house that was not at all supportive, and swimming was where my power came from. So my resilience came from being in the pool and having that power. Okay, we have another addition here from Cassandra. I've closed chapters in my life without knowing what would come next, but each time I do it, it gets easier because I trust I will land on my feet. Okay, beautiful and so true. This idea of risk taking, this idea of kind of going with what you understand or kind of taking that leap and that paying off and that taking that leap getting easier. That's a great example of resilience. This last part, getting to where you are today, same thing. I think we have good flavor here. But the point I want to leave you with is that you already have the ability to be resilient. Just remember that. Even when it feels totally gone, try to call back to this idea that you have it and there's proof that you have it. Okay, this one may seem a little bit out there, but the second perspective I want to offer you is remember why you work. There are many reasons we work, and we often lose sight of them. And so what I mean by why you work is it's more than a paycheck, or ideally it is. In my answer to why I work, whether this was at Google or now, is I work to fund the life that I want to live. That's why I work. It took me a really long time to get there. Because back when I was at Google, I thought I worked for the access to, to being with all the smart people, or traveling for my job, or, the status of working at Google. That was not the real reason, or that was what I've come to learn is not why I work. I work now to fund the life that I want. Does anyone have any other thoughts on the answer to this question? Why do you work? You work, okay, because you like what you do. That's a beautiful answer. Yes. So there's a connection to your values or your interests, but you work because you love it. Beautiful. And as we're waiting for answers, I want to ask this next question. And you don't have to answer this, but I want you to think about this. What changed, if anything, when you ask yourself this question? So you don't have to answer it now, but take this question with you. Why do I work? If you can get clear on that, it will make a difference, because it will help you remember that work isn't the end all be all. So the takeaway here is when work feels like a trap or misaligned, it can be because we've lost sight of what it's actually in service of. So reconnecting to your why, even briefly, is an act of resilience. Okay. Perspective 3, stakes check. One way that we can let our resilience slip is if we lose track of the stakes. And I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes or often, when I get stressed or when I get pressed, I'm responding to this belief that the stakes are high. They are all the way at the roof, always, all the time, which can lead to fear and other nasty side effects. So again, this question's for the room. Yes, Sheila, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to point this out. Sheila is retired, and pointing out that, folks here are not all working, and that's okay. And not just okay, that's great. And I know that there's going to be elements of this that relate to you. So that last example was for people who are or who want to work. Thank you for that point, Sheila. Okay, so for stakes check, question for the group. How do you notice you respond when the stakes seem really high? Anybody? Or I'll ask a second question. You scream and shout. Yeah, Kenneth. Yep. Oh, and you don't take risks. Nice. Yes, Janine. So you're saying when the stakes seem high, you're less likely to take that leap. You're less likely to go for it. Great examples. Now, what are some examples when the stakes seem high, but maybe they aren't that high? Does anyone have an example of that? I can give you one from my own life. So as Nicole mentioned, I am the chair of a dog park committee. And this was our first winter with the dog park. And we realized that no one was going to help us. The town was not going to help plow the pathway from our parking lot to the dog park. Now, there are some safety concerns, but you would have thought, based on my reaction, that it was the end of the world. And it wasn't until I reset my stakes and realized that we have a committee and we have able-bodied people that can help, that I brought the stakes down and I was able to handle what was going on. So that's one example from me. What are examples of truly high stakes in life? So for me, I'll give an example of this too. For me, it was 2 years ago, my dad got really sick. He was in the hospital for 5 weeks. To me, those are high stakes. And my life had to adjust. I had to change sessions with my clients in my practice. I had to be in Florida to be with my dad. Like, there are high stakes in life, is my point here. Okay. But the takeaway is when you notice yourself starting to lose resilience, feel upset or threatened, check in on the stakes. And I'm guessing that 9.9 times out of 10, they'll probably be lower than they seem, at least at first. Okay. And then Kenneth said, the problem on the table always seems high to me. Okay. We can talk about that. If you'd like, we can talk about that at the end if we've got time. But that's a good point. The problem on the table always seems high to me. So I'd say a takeaway from this that might help you is to actually take a beat and consider what are the actual stakes of the problem. How high is it in reality? See if you can ask yourself that to help bring it down. Okay, the fourth perspective. What is happening versus what is happening to me? This is another little tool. Some ways that we lose track of our resilience is if we find a way to make something about us versus what it might really be about. Like, does anyone here ever take on problems from their spouses or their kids or their bosses, their teammates? Um, my point here is that there's a valuable difference to consider between what is happening and what is happening to me. So I'll ask the group, what's the difference between something happening versus happening to you? Anyone have a thought on that? Or what might be a reason that we would make something about ourselves?
Narcissism.
Okay, narcissism.
Mhm.
Okay, our ego also can get in the way there sometimes. Um, fear for me, I know for me, uh, if I'm afraid or if my resilience is low, it can feel personal. And then what changes when you clarify that something is happening versus happening to you? And David said unmanaged empathy. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting phrasing. Unmanaged empathy. So kind of boundaryless or borderless empathy. Cassandra seconds that. Good. Good. So the thing I want you to think about here, you don't have to answer this now, is what changes for you when you clarify that something is happening versus happening to you? Okay, takeaway. If we get clear on the fact that something is happening generally versus happening to us, we may be able to find some resilience there. Okay, a couple more perspectives. Pay attention to what you can control. The things that you can control are the only things. The rest are the rest. Some things you can influence and many things you just can't touch. So, what are some examples of things that are in your control at the office, at home, in general? I'll go back to myself, my physical health. That's in my control to a certain degree. What I eat, how I exercise, that's in my control. What are examples of things that are absolutely not in your control? Oh, here's one. Cassandra, thank you. You can control how you respond versus how you react. That's a great, great, great answer. Yes, and the rest of the world is something we cannot control, James. You're right. There's a lot that's not in our control. Most things are not. And I'm not saying that to scare you, but instead to offer you a tool or a reframe, which is what can you do about the things that you can control? Right. And you can't control other people's behavior, Janine. Exactly. Good point. So, what can you do about the things you can't control? Not much. So, the takeaway of this perspective, you can't control you can't control much of what's happening right now, but you can control how you respond to it, what you focus on, and what you do next. That is quite a lot. Okay. Sixth perspective, resilience, self-sabotage. It is a thing. What I mean by this is we play a role in reducing our own resilience by telling ourselves the same stories, the same old lies. And we spend a lot of time thinking about what I call the dirty S word or should. Using words like should can be self-sabotage. So you can put some of these in the chat, or you can think about this. What are some of your S words or your shoulds? What are those stories? Some examples. I should be farther in my career. I should have figured this out. I should be, I'll give you an example from me. I'm a creative person. When I was working at Google, I thought I should be in a creative job. And I spent years banging my head against the wall because I was creative, not being creative. And it wasn't until I shifted my mindset and I was in an operations role, marketing operations, I realized that in itself is creative work. Solving problems, helping people, helping with process, that's creativity. So that was a should for me. We have a couple of examples in the chat. I should be able to juggle it all. That's a common one. That's a big one, Cassandra, especially for women, especially for my clients that are women. There's this sense that everything should be able to be managed. It should be possible. It's noble to do it all. That's a dirty S word. My life should be like theirs. Yes. Can you tell your mother of young children? Yes, definitely. That is a definite that comes through. And children, yeah, are a good example of this. What stories might you be perpetuating for yourself that cause your power and your ability to be resilient to shrink? Again, think about that. You don't have to answer it, but what stories might you be perpetuating for yourself that that cause your power and your ability to be resilient shrink? And then what's a reframe you can use to take some power away from one of your shoulds, like the example that I gave? I should be creative. I should be in a creative role. I should be a creative director. The reframe for me was, what I do is actually really freaking creative. It's just a different application of it. So the takeaway here, we have a role in the strength of our own resilience. If we can be honest and kind to ourselves about the familiar stories we tell ourselves and see behaviors that we learned long ago repeating, we can stop the resilience leak. And if you hear the word should, you'll probably hear it a lot. If you hear it in your head, it's a sign, it's a flare. Pay attention to that, investigate that, and then think about what you're actually saying to yourself and what a reframe is. Okay, and last perspective, some people might think this is woo-woo and a throwaway. It's not, it's science. Gratitude helps attitude. Gratitude helps resilience. There are scientific studies that time spent thinking about what you're grateful for boosts your happiness and affects the neurochemistry in your brain. It causes serotonin and dopamine to increase. And those chemicals positively impact your mood, your willpower, and your motivation. Over time, if you can practice gratitude, it will train your brain to help focus on what's going well versus only what isn't. Again, this, especially if your resilience is low, you may be rolling your eyes at this. It is scientific, and I encourage you to think about it. So again, you can answer this now or not. What are you grateful for? I'll tell you my answers. I'm grateful for 2 beautiful dogs, my husband, being able to live in my house in the Berkshires. I'm grateful for my parents, loads of things. If you have trouble answering this question, that's good. That's data. Ask yourself a few other ways. Where are you growing in your life? What are you learning? Who is inspiring you? You'll find some gratitude in there. So the takeaway, oh, here we go. One recurrent difficult should, okay, David, is I should extract the greatest value from my premier education, including Tufts. Mm-hmm. Okay, beautiful. That is a powerful should. And that is one I'd be happy to talk with you about personally and directly, David. Thank you for sharing that. I wonder, again, I can't see hands, but I wonder how many people here can relate to this idea. Okay, so David, contact me after if you want to talk more about that. And then Kenneth added, gratitude comes with age. Interesting. So that hypothesis sounds like we're able to be and show more gratitude as we grow. Okay, interesting. Try this one on. When you're feeling like low on resilience, see if you can conjure up some gratitude and see what happens. Okay, just checking in. How are we all doing? We're going to start the exercise now. Again, I want it to be interactive. I'm going to run you through it with my own example so you can see it. And then if we have time, I'm going to ask each of you to try it out and spend some time on it. And then we can follow up. You can follow me directly afterwards. I'll mention this again at the end. But basically, think of this as a starting point. And I'm going to model how I did it so that you can hopefully take something away from it. And so what we just talked about were some tools on how to channel your resilience. And what we're going to move into now is how you can actually take steps to reclaim it. And the ultimate path to reclaiming resilience, in my opinion, is action, making moves. And one example, one nonstop path to action is a coaching exercise that we call the gap. Now, it has nothing to do with the store. I'm just being silly. But the gap exercise is a super powerful tool that we use to help practice the act of slowing down to get us clear on where we are, where we want to go, and how to get there. Okay. I tried to make this as simple as possible. So this is what the gap looks like. Point A on the left, this is life as it is right now. And for the sake of this workshop, we can make an assumption that our resilience is lower. Okay? Mapping point A lets both the coach and the client see their true starting line, which is critical before jumping over to point B, the ideal future state. And like I said, slowing down, you'll hear me say that a lot today. Point A is a great opportunity, reflecting on life as it is right now, to slow down. And it's packed with clues to help you get to point B. Now, point B is the ideal future state. So we could call that resilience embodied. It captures how the client, or how you, me, how we want to work, how we want to live, the relationships we want to have, what our health looks like. It'll help us imagine what it will look like and feel like once the shift has happened, the specific outcomes of how we want to be. Okay? It's the true ideal state. When we do this exercise, there's no holding back. We ask our inner voices to take a seat. We put all of our critical thinking aside and we try to be as dreamy as possible. That's how we get to the ideal future state. And the cool thing about this exercise is it can apply to big, hairy things, like the example I'll show you, which was changing my career. And it can be, smaller or more specific changes or evolutions that you're considering in your relationships, or at your current job, etc. But hopefully you'll see what I mean. So let me give you a little bit more detail about points A and point B. So the way that we approach defining these points is all about asking yourself questions. So for A, life as it is right now, the questions are, what does it really feel like right now, truly? What are the impacts on you and those around you of being where you are? And what's keeping you there? What is sticky? What's making it hard for you? What's keeping you stuck? The questions for the ideal future state are, what are the signs that you're there? Like, I often ask my clients this when we start a relationship. Okay, so there's this place you want to go. What will the signs be? How will you know you're there? That there's a lot of good information when you think of it that way. How do you want to feel? What do you want to feel like when you wake up in the morning? Getting clear on that will help us start to define this ideal future state. And what might it look like? Like, how does it actually come to life? What does your day look like? What are you doing? How are you operating? Again, in both cases, without holding back. Now, you may be saying, great. Why though? I understand A, I understand B, but what's the point of the gap? What's important about the in-between? So I'm going to rattle through some benefits of doing this work. First, like I said, again, over and over again, a chance to slow down. It's the gift of reflection that we so often skip over. It surfaces what actually needs to change. So, rather than solving the wrong problem, the gap helps us surface the actual shift that we need to make, whether it's behavioral, mindset-based, environmental, or strategic. It can help turn overwhelm into a roadmap. Okay, it can help turn overwhelm into a roadmap. It gives us a way to untangle things and create structure, and it breaks the big change into clear, doable steps between point A and point B. Okay? It can generate motivation intrinsically because the process itself is self-defined and it taps into our internal drivers rather than external pressure, which will also help make the change we want to make more sustainable. It maps where you are in the process. Sometimes you're at the very beginning, sometimes you're close to a breakthrough. Knowing where you are in the gap helps give context, clarity, and grace. It also uncovers hidden resources. You're not starting from scratch. It helps you surface your strengths, relationships that you have, your values and patterns that you already have access to. It reduces self-criticism. We've talked about this, already on this workshop. When you realize you're in a gap, you stop expecting yourself to already be at point B. That shift alone can lower some shame and some self-doubt and build compassion. It gives us room to reflect and to refine. Point B isn't fixed. The gap gives you a framework to reflect, refine, and shift direction as needed, but you don't have to start over. That's what's cool about it. It works with sweeping and specific questions. I mentioned this. It can be something big and hairy, like I want to move to Europe, or it could be something more specific and local. It surfaces the ingredients and actions of change. Actions is the key word here. You'll get out of this gap process with clarity, motivation, tools, and awareness. It's more than just insight. It's fuel to help you transform. And of course, tying this all back to why we're here, it will reignite your resilience. Okay. So I'm about to give you an example of what I just said. But do you have any questions so far about what I've laid out? Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water. Okay, let's keep going. So what does this actually look like? I'm going to show you one of my own gap exercises. And in this case, it was a pretty seismic shift in my life. And I want you to, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that this typically happens between a client and a coach. It's a guided experience. So my hope is that in showing you how I approached it, it will kind of mimic that experience for you. But just know that for today's purposes, this is an illustration of what it is. I still believe you will find value in watching this. And like I said, I'm willing to meet with some of you to work on this with you if it's interesting to you. And I'll get to that on the other side. So here we go. So here I am, young, fresh-faced, my belly was full of all the free meals I was eating at Google. I had just started. I had nothing but hope and excitement. It was really great. I lived in San Francisco. They moved me from Seattle, and I got to have my own apartment there, and I was working with really smart, interesting people and traveling all around the world, and everything was great until it wasn't. I tried to find a picture to illustrate when things weren't great. This is the best. I think this shows my expression of just kind of like feeling exhausted and dejected. But basically, this was about 6 or 7 years later. This was my point A. So for this example, my point A was 2018 at Google. I was feeling 10 years older. I was not getting sleep. I was not in good shape at all. Yes, I had sparkly things like a good paycheck and a good standard of living. I also had regular anxiety. I was feeling stuck all the time. I couldn't really see any opportunity. I was at an all-time low. I was at my point A. Okay. Now, this is my point B, and we're going to get into both. And this picture, to me, I chose my point B because my point B is the thing that I wanted to shift was life and work on my own terms. That was the thing I wanted the most when I was at point A. So from point A, what I thought I wanted most at point B was life and work on my own terms. And to me, that means freedom with my dog and my time in the sun and having a free life. Okay, but when I was at point A, my gap felt like it was across the whole universe. Like I couldn't imagine this place of me and my dog outside in the sun and my life feeling full. And from the standpoint of being at point A when I was totally stressed out. So I had to figure out where to start. Is there a question? Okay. I had to figure out where to start. So I'm going to take you through my A. So I remember I had some questions in the A column to help us figure out where am I? Where am I stuck? Why am I stuck? These will be the answers that will show you my experience. First way I was stuck. I was working at the best place to work, but I was totally miserable. That was a mind F. Excuse me, I don't want to swear, but it was really confusing that I was working at this amazing place and feeling so terrible and misaligned. I had dread every morning when I was waking up. I gained weight. My relationship was falling apart. My husband, thankfully, we got married, but at this point in my life, he turned to me and said, I don't know if we can get married because you are so messy, so stressed out. Like my resilience, y'all, was so low. I was asking myself, is this it? Like, is the rest of my life going to be me working around the clock, feeling like garbage and like being stressed out? I was having panic attacks. I had lots of faith in Google. Like it wasn't the place I remember where I started, and yet I was giving them everything that I had. I had this idea that stability meant money only. And that kept me at Google because I thought I can't leave. I'm trapped because the way I'm stable is if I have a paycheck. And that was something that took a long time to get through. And that's for a different workshop also. But it's an example of where I was at in my A. I was working for someone else's bottom line. So it was all about Google. It was all about their, shareholders and all of that. And that just wasn't working for me anymore. I was a cog in a business, not a family. They told us we were a family. We were not a family. It's a corporation. I was selling products. I was not supporting people. This was a good clue for me, but this misalignment was a really big part of my struggle with resilience. Okay, so those are my A's. That was my starting point. That was where I was with low resilience and what my life looked like. Okay, Now looking at my B, so dreaming bigger, quieting the saboteur voice, and really focusing on what I truly wanted and how I truly wanted to feel and be. Here was my output. I wanted work that felt true and aligned. I wanted to do more living and less working. I wanted to be working for myself, not someone else. I wanted to fund the life I want myself, not via Google. I wanted to create and nurture my own brand and content. That's a big deal for me. I have a lot I want to say. I have a lot I want to share, and I wanted to create myself and put myself out there. I wanted multiple sources of income. I didn't want to ever again be tied to one way of making money. I wanted to feel balanced and happy about life. I wanted stability beyond financial stability. I wanted space and time for other interests like my swimming and the dog park, etc. Also, you may have noticed I'm picking up my pace. I'm realizing we only have 9 minutes left, so I'm going to try to not go too fast. But we can do this. Okay, so to recap this was in that continuum the dreamiest thing I could think of. Even if it didn't feel realistic, that's not the point. The point was, what's the dreamiest outcome I can imagine? All right. So you might be saying, okay, great. You figured out your A, you figured out your B. Then what? The gap is cool. What happens then? The thing that's so interesting and most powerful about all this is that the way that you make this all real is with action. Action is what's in the middle. And actions can take many forms. And this slide is one of the most important slides I want you to snapshot for yourself, because action is a direct line to resilience. Action is a direct line to changing our lives or changing our situations. Okay? And actions come in all forms, like doing research, hiring an expert, doing experiments, creating new boundaries, making new commitments to yourself, conversations with people, learning, tools. There are tons of different ways that you can create action to help move you towards resilience and into the life you actually want. So putting it in an equation, understanding the gap plus actions are resilience in motion. This is how you make change. So I'm going to show you what this meant for me. So if you remember, my B was the thing I wanted to shift was my life and my work on different terms. On my own terms. Two elements of that from my list. One was work that felt true and aligned. The other was funding the life I want to live. Okay? So let's look at the actions that I tried in both of those categories. So on the left side here are the actions that I took towards work that felt true and aligned. And on the right side of the column, I made a category of actions so you can understand what I mean when I say things like research or conversations. So first, I stopped. I really looked at what impacted me and what was true. I slowed down. There it is again. But that's an action. Slowing down is an action. I explored all different kinds of career types. I was starting from scratch. That took two kinds of action: research and conversations with as many people as I could. People in my field, in fields that I was interested in, people that I admired, etc. I enlisted my own coach. That's in the category of hiring an expert. This can look like all different kinds of experts, but that's one example. I got educated and certified in the background. So once I figured out coaching is what I wanted to do, I took a certification program and I did my practicum and I got certified. So that's a learning action. And then here's another kind of action, a tiny experiment. I blocked my calendar Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings, and I coached as many people as I could. And I wanted to test, did I like it? Was I good at it? And could I make money? So here are some examples of actions that brought me resilience and moved me towards what I wanted out of my life. Now, funding the life I want to live, that was another element of my B. I found a tool, Tiller.com. I didn't know how I was spending my money. I had no idea. I needed a tool to help me do that. Once I had that tool, I had to figure out, well, how much money do I spend? What does spending at my Google level look like? What does a medium version look like? And what does like bare bones just before I have to move in with my parents look like? This action of research helped me decide how and how long to stay at Google. I did another experiment. I spent 3 months with my husband living at the medium level of income just to see what that looked like. That was an action. I got a financial planner. That's another kind of expert to help me understand my money. I laid out a 1-year goal income. So I made a commitment to myself that when I left Google in my first year, I would make X amount of money. And I would do everything I could to do that, and I'd stick to it. And I also explored other levers to generate money. Like I said, I didn't want just one source of income. So I did a bunch of other experiments and research to figure out ways I could make money, my house being one. I also am a vintage fan, and I do some reselling on eBay, like, little things like that I like that also bring me money. Those were actions. And last kind of action was an agreement with my husband. I had to get sign off an agreement. We're making a big change in my life. So in order to fund the life that I wanted to live, these are some actions that I took. Okay. Now, obviously we don't have time to do this. There's 4 minutes left. But what I will do, Nicole, tell me if this works. I can send you this workshop, a guided version of it that you can do on your own. Okay, if that's interesting to you. And thank you, Nicole, just put it in there. You can set a time with me if you would like. I encourage you to. I'm always happy to meet you and serve you however I can. So the link is there. I'm just going to read through it quickly, but basically the first step is deciding what's that shift you want to make. So at the top of a piece of paper, write that shift. For me, it was a life that was more aligned with what I actually wanted. Here are the A's and the questions that you'll ask yourself and answer, and you really want to give yourself time to do this. Here are the B's and the questions. Here's the menu of actions you can take. Okay, I know this is a lot, I'm going fast, but I will get this to you. And in summary, here are the things that I hope you remember from today. The first is that you're already resilient. The second is that you have tools to channel resilience. We went over those perspectives, this exercise. There are tools that can help you the next time you feel it slipping. Exploring the gap is an act of resilience. We just went through it quickly. I encourage you to think about your own version of it. And action is a one-way ticket to resilience.
There's something wrong with it.
Action is a one-way ticket to resilience. That, like, if there was one line I could leave you with, it's that. And so what I was hoping for today, if we did this together, was that you would leave here with one action that you would take, you'd commit to me to take. So I want you to think about that. What's one action, a small one, medium one, doesn't matter how big it is, that you'll commit to in service of your own resilience? And remember, here's the menu. It can be a conversation with someone you admire. It can be finding a tool to solve a problem that you have. It can be doing some research, hiring an expert, all these different things. Try to commit to yourself to take an action. Okay? And I'll send this over to you, but here's the gap on a page. And then this is what I had mentioned. Nicole put the links in here, but if you'd like to talk to me, I'm happy to give at least 6 complimentary sessions. Anyone here that wants one, I'm happy to support you. You can click the link Nicole put in. You can scan this QR code. Thank you. We have a minute left. If you can stay for at least this minute, I want to at least try to take one question. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask me that's burning?
I'm sure there are a lot of burning questions. It's
Okay.
a lot, right? They're probably, I'm in my head.
Yes.
I know my action.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
You
not
willing
going to
to
tell you
share
what
with
it
us?
is, but I know
Okay,
my
that's
action.
okay. Okay, good.
You're getting
Good,
some
good.
thank yous. You're getting
Thank you
no
all.
questions at the moment, but that was fantastic. Tufts is getting a new swimming pool. We
Hey,
are. I don't know if I've told you
wow.
that. A whole new aquatic
No.
center. We'll have to talk about that. I can show you the design. Well, Michael,
Wow.
thank you so much. I mean, if people want to ask a question, you can, but I want to do that final thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
think this was amazing. I think it was valuable. I think it was concrete. Thank you for taking for engaging with everyone throughout. It was
Yes,
a nice size group, right? And I think we had some
definitely.
folks who were, you know, found it easy to share in the chat, but also, just sort of like thinking about it on their own. And
Yeah,
I definitely, we will this will be up on our YouTube channel. I put that link in probably within the next
great.
couple of days. But also, Michael, said he would share his deck because those
Yes.
slides at the end, the concrete exercise,
Yep.
we're happy to do that too. And what else? It's 2 o'clock on the dot. You've got a lot of thank yous.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you, everyone.
yeah, thanks so much for tuning in today. And please, continue to check the calendar. We have some other great ones coming up, and Michael will be back.
Mm.
So looking forward to having
Yes,
him back.
I would love to be back. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nicole, for making this happen. This is
All right.
a huge value you're offering. Thank you.
Can't thank you enough.
You're
You were
welcome.
the magic here. That was really great.
All
So I'm
right.
going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
And